And because of that, we're able to sit here and share this with the entire world. We were never meant to know what's in this letter. This was meant to be a secret. Now, Michael, I was doing this research, and you have to understand, I was waking up, and I was going till, it'd be like 9 p.m. at night, and I was thinking, okay, I found this source, and I got to find the other source. 5 more minutes, and it'd be 3 in the morning, and then 5 in the morning. And finally, I'd have to go to sleep and sleep for a few hours, and then wake up. And, I've shared this with a friend who's a Methodist, and he said, Nehemiah, do you know what we call that in my tradition? I said, no, what? He said, Nehemiah, you're arrested by the Spirit. I said, okay, I wouldn't call it that necessarily, but it's true. I couldn't put this down. I was so engrossed in this. I was finding these sources. There was one source I couldn't find online or in any of my databases, but I found out there was a library or a bookstore, a used bookstore in Jerusalem that had a copy of a certain book I needed. So I called up a friend in Israel and I said, I'm begging you, stop everything you're doing, go to that bookstore, buy the book and overnight it to me. And it took 3 days to overnight it from Israel. I was shaking for 3 days and couldn't sleep while I was waiting. And when I got it, it didn't disappoint. It was amazing, these things. So while I was doing this, Michael, I had to clear my head. My head was spinning. Now, one of the things I've shared, and I think I've shared this with you, I definitely shared it publicly, is that on my mother's side, I'm descended from this famous rabbi named Zalmala of Volozhin, and he, according to my uncle and cousin, was a descendant of King David. And as I was doing this research, looking at these sources, I decided, you know what? I've been sharing that for years, and I'd like to dig down to the sources and find out, is it even true? And I was pretty certain I was descended from Zalmala of Volozhin, but I didn't know how. I knew my great-grandfather, Nehemiah Robinson, after whom I'm named, was his descendant. But how? What are their names? How does it tie in? So I start doing this genealogy research, and I started on Ancestry.com. I mean, it's really simple. Paid the money. Mm-hmm. I end up on all these different websites. I end up finding my third great-grandfather or something, birth certificate written in Hebrew from Lithuania from 1846. And that traces me back eventually to this woman who's the daughter of Rabbi Zalmala of Volozhin. And my ancestor was a rabbi who married the daughter of this other rabbi. Right? Now, nobody knew the name of this woman. And this is my claim to descending from the famous rabbi, is that his daughter married this other rabbi, and she's my great-great-great-great-grandmother. And in all the Jewish sources, there were books written in Jewish genealogy, all the Jewish sources, I contacted the people who wrote the books, and they said, we don't know her name. As far as we know, her name is, or not her name, but the way we refer to her is Batsheva. And why Batsheva? Her father died in 1788 when she was 7 years old. And then she was raised, and when she was a little bit older, she was married off to my ancestor, who was a famous rabbi, and another rabbi. But the real claim to descent that I had, I mean, this is very personal for me, was through this woman who nobody knows the name of. They call her 7-year-old girl. And I found the source of this. It's a book from the year 1900 called Ir Vilna, about the city of Vilnius. And she's described as Batsheva, the 7-year-old girl, little 7-year-old girl, Batsheva. And I thought, well, that's kind of tragic, right?
No name.
No name. And what's really bizarre? So her husband wasn't as famous as her father. We know her father's name and her husband's name, but we don't know her name. Right? So her husband's claim to fame is he married the 7-year, she was more than 7 when she got married, right? He married the girl who had survived the man in 1788 when she was 7 years old, but nobody knew her name. So I started digging, and I thought, names are so important in Jewish sources and in the Jewish culture. Wouldn't it be wonderful if I could, and I had no hope. I literally talked to the man who wrote the book on Jewish genealogy, exchanged emails with him, and he says, we just call her 7-year-old little girl. Nobody knows, and there's actually thousands of Jews descended from her, like I'm not unique, right? There's a lot of people descended from this woman, 7-year-old little girl, and I'm digging through these sources. And what happened is there's Jews who went to Lithuania and photographed these sources and transcribed them, and you can search them. And I spent dozens of hours searching these sources, and I ended up finding a Russian census record from 1816. And really this was a tax record, meaning every time a Jew was born and every time a Jew died, they wrote it down in a ledger. The rabbi's job was to write it in a ledger, and the purpose was so that the Russian Empire could tax them. And in the Jewish sources, they don't mention her name, but in the Russian sources, they do, because she was taxable. And her name was Sarah. And I cried when I find out. The name of my ancestor, who nobody, there's thousands of Jews who are descended from this woman, and they call her 7-year-old little girl. And in the tax records, her name is Sarah Nevedel. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. We find out her name and God's name is such a powerful name. How can that be lost? Right? I mean, here's some woman who really isn't important in history. Besides a few thousand Jews descended from her, nobody ever heard of her. Right? You know, a small group of people in planet Earth. This is the creator of the universe. We should all know his name. It should be proclaimed from every rooftop. Now, Michael, when I sat down to do this little side project to clear my head, what I didn't know, and I discovered through the process, is that not only was I descended from Zalman of Volozhin, which I knew, I just didn't know how, it turns out Mayor of Lublin, Maharam of Lublin, is my 11th great-grandfather. Meaning, if you say great 11 times, he is my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, is this very same rabbi who said that hide this letter in a pure and holy place, that things like this should never be printed, lest the unworthy read them, that the name is Shvach Olam Kamatz Yehovah. He's my direct ancestor.